changing meetings.
Hey, Lohino, since I ran the meeting last month, we finished in record time.
I'm sure.
So we're going to need you to pick it up today.
Let's see. Yeah, we just logged off the other meeting, so we'll have everybody else join here pretty quick.
Mark, how you been? Good to see you.
I'm doing well. How are you, Andy?
Good. Surviving. Doing okay.
Guys ready for another rollback?
I guess.
Getting there.
Yeah.
Richard, how are you? I haven't seen you in a long time.
I know, I'm doing well. You know, we're pretty well. You know, it's not the best time to be in the restaurant business, but everything else is going good. Yeah.
Roll back to 25% capacity.
Yeah, you know, it wasn't working for us at 50, so we're going to stay closed for a while. That's okay. We have our toy store and bookstore, so we feel lucky to have those. And we'll hopefully be able to make something at Christmas and keep things open. But yeah, tough time.
We just came through Illinois, and the governor up there virtually shut all the restaurants and bars down again. And there was a report that something like 65% of the restaurant industry would probably never reopen in Illinois.
Wow.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me at all. We're lucky because we have a retail part of our business, but also we own our building. We were able to finally buy it in February, and that was fortuitous. So we hope that we'll be able to hang in there and then open once all this is more settled.
Jim, where were you in Illinois?
We drove through it twice, but we stopped out on the east side of St. Louis.
That's where I went to.
Eastonville, that
Edwardsville.
Edwardsville, yes.
Lived there while I was in college.
Oh, okay.
Okay, how are we doing with additional members here?
I don't know, but real quick, Richard,
Whoever just joined, please mute.
Richard, any upcoming election for us?
Any news? No, nothing yet, but soon. I'm going to make a decision soon here. I will let everybody know so there's plenty of time if I don't run for somebody to run in my place.
Okay, so let's take a look at, do we have enough for a quorum yet?
Excuse me. Rick, what is your quorum for your board here? I can go through the list, name off who I see.
It's 5, but yes, please go through.
Okay, I'm gonna do that. I think we have our 5, but so starting, we have Director Gonzalez, Director Waller, Director Graham, Director Williams, Wayne Williams, Director Scorman, that's your 5. And then I see Rick, Bev, Andy, Miss Ivy, and staff and member governments and citizens, I think are all on the line. Did I miss any board members that are on?
Holly Williams is on too.
Is she? Okay. So that gives you
Dennis
6.
Carpenter.
7. All right. So that's,
I don't think they got me, but
got you, Mr. Carpenter.
yeah.
Okay,
Good.
great. So just remember to state your name when making a motion so that we catch those clearly on the recording. And then I turn it back to you.
Okay, it looks like for item 1, call to order, we've established our quorum. So I call this meeting to order and we've established the quorum. Approval of the agenda. Has everybody reviewed the agenda? Have any questions, comments, or motion to approve?
Move to approve the agenda. This is Mark.
Second, the Swains.
Okay.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
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 And any opposed, say nay. Okay, so that's approved. Item 3, public comment period for items not on the agenda. Do we have any individuals here, whether online or questions for our meeting today? Okay, I'm hearing nothing. Anything from staff? Nobody's dialed in, tweeted to you guys? That's good to you. Okay, again, hearing none, so we will go to item 4, approval of the minutes from October 14, 2020 meeting. Has everybody had time to review? Oh, did somebody say something or was that a motion?
Sorry. Let's see, Commissioner Williams, move approval.
Any
And
second?
Councilmember Williams, seconds. Holly, you're really quiet, so you might turn up your mic volume.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from October 14. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Okay, that passes unanimously. Item 5, Citizen Advisory Committee Monthly Report.
Thank you. This is Tim Godfrey, Chair of the CAC. So good meeting, long, but a good meeting. We discussed the budget in detail. Our recommendation is to, we have a positive recommendation for the budget, but there were a couple of concerns that were discussed. I'd just like to mention briefly, please. One was, and I understand that since the CAC meeting, some of this has been addressed, but there was an issue with the payback to El Paso County on West Colorado Avenue. There were several line items in the city budget that were mentioned West Colorado, but there was a $0 amount. And then we noticed that Manitou Springs did make a payment in their 2021 budget request to pay that back, but there was no dollar amount at the city. And so we did just highlight that we noted that. Since then, we understand there have been discussions. Jennifer did mention, Jennifer Irvin with the county did mention that they were in discussion with the city about that, and she was comfortable with the progress and the direction the conversation was going. So the CAC didn't make a big deal of that. However, there was also some discussion in the admin budget of, it was a total of about $446,000 that is in there for estimates of RTA 3 projects. Concern was that there was really only one entity, one member government that was using contractors for engineering, design, and estimation, and that this money would just be additive to the city because the county wasn't using that. And we were uncomfortable with not having any guidelines or information about how that money would be used and available to other member governments. Since then, I have had conversations with Travis and the city in terms of the city's ideas and how they would want to use that. And we understand that that money would be available to everyone. But there was concern because of lack of understanding or guidelines for that. And the CAC as a whole really didn't understand. Yes, we've had some project overruns. Some of those were conscious decisions. For instance, the bridge over Cottonwood Creek on Academy Boulevard was originally a repair. As they got to the more detailed design later in the design process, It was more cost effective in the long run to replace that. It was a little more money now over the original estimates, but in the end, it was justified. A similar situation with the Circle Avenue bridges. And so there have been instances in where projects did exceed estimates. We also understand that there wasn't a whole lot of effort put into the cost, the original estimates of projects, that in some cases that looked about right kind of thing. And so there was an uncertainty by several members of the CAC and discussion about the rules around using that, whether it was legit, legal, and it would be open to everyone. And so express some concern for that. I know the board's talked about it. And so I'm a little more comfortable after my conversation with Travis, but I haven't been able to share my conversation with the other members of the CAC. So, but other than that, we recommend the budget as presented with those comments. The other item on the CAC that will come up later would be the RTA 3 workshop. We did have a recommendation on item 3, and that was that this is the AB list that was on the matrix, that we have an AB list prioritized, much like we have in RTA 2, and that that we do not publicly, at least initially, publish a hard and fast date that we project to go to the B list. We felt like that would be tying our hands in case something happened that's too far down the road to be able to see in the crystal ball clearly. I think it's an aspirational goal that we should have something in mind as we plan through this, but we felt like by having a hard and fast date that we will get to the B list at year 7.5 was too restrictive, given the unknowns that we face between now and that period of time. Other than that, we did approve some contract requests for the make recommendation, some contract requests for the city of Colorado Springs and for the city of Manitou. Other than that, I think that was a summary of the CAC meeting.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Jim? Okay, I need a motion to accept the committee monthly report.
This Commissioner or Councilmember Williams, I move approval.
Second, Mark.
Okay, have a motion and a second to approve the CAC monthly report. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Okay, that passes unanimously. Item 6, monthly financial reports. Let's see if we have any good news, Bev.
Okay. Hey, Jessica, could you pull those up on the screen? Okay, there you go. So for September, we had almost 11.2 million in sales and use tax, which was 2.4 million over the monthly budget, or 27, almost 28%. So year to date, we're 13.3 million over the annual budget through September, or 17.8%. And then on page 2, this really tells more of the story because the budget is conservative. But September of 2019 compared to September of 2020, we exceeded 2019 by 1.6%, or almost 17%, and we're ahead year to date 6.1%, or 7.5%. I have an inquiry into the Department of Revenue because we received a fairly high amount of prior year sales and use tax receipts, and we always receive some because vendors file late or file incorrectly in the prior year. But I'm trying to find out why we had so much more than we normally do. So that is some of the reason that this is ahead of last September's actual.
Okay, and I think, and maybe I heard you wrong, I think you said up 1.6% and 16%, I think you meant 1.6 million for September. And
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
6
Okay, sorry.
and
Yeah.
6.1 million for the year.
Right. Did I say percent? I'm sorry.
Yeah, and then you said 7.5 and then 16 point, or, yeah, so, no, that's clarifying for the public, but.
Okay,
we see the
thank you.
numbers. We see the numbers. Great job.
So are there any questions?
Any questions for Bev? Those were pretty good news. I like that. Okay, well then, I guess, anything else, Bev, on financials?
No.
Okay, well then, that's information only, good information, great information. So item 7, 2021 budget presentation. So I think you're still gonna lead us through this,
Right.
Bev?
Right, and Jessica will pull that up and we'll start there. So the CAC went through it by each section, and they made a positive recommendation, except that they had 2 concerns. And Jim went over those, and one of them was the payback to the county for some of West Colorado Avenue, and Gail can speak to that when we get to the city's portion of the presentation. And the other one was the concern about administrative funding of the next list of projects for the next capital renewal. And we can talk to that also. But let's go to page 4, and I'll go over the allocation of revenue, since that's the basis of the budget. So we have an estimate of sales and use tax of 105 million. And we discussed this in a prior board meeting and had a little vote on this as to what we should use. And like I said, we're always conservative. Then interest estimated at 600,000. Then we subtract the sales and use tax collection costs that we pay the Department of Revenue of 270,000. Estimated administrative costs of 899,600, and then the reserve adjustment of minus 160,000. With revenue going up, the reserve adjustment is 10% of the difference in revenue between the last budget and this one. And so then you can see transit 10%, 10.4 million, maintenance 36.5 million almost, or 35%, and 55% capital, 57,349,000. And then the allocations below by member government is based on their decennial census, the last one. And so also transit has estimated transit fare box revenue and other revenue of 2,978,000. So does anybody have any questions about this page?
Any questions?
Okay, so then the next pages just put the revenue into the revenue and expense summary. So 5, 6, and 7, there's a column for the estimated carryover, and that's the unused prior budgeted allocation. And then you add it to the draft 2021 budget, which is taking the revenue that we just went through in the allocations in that next column. Then any line item transfers, and we don't really have those at the beginning, but we have them throughout the years. So there's a column there for that. And then the total. And that would be in December when I come to the board, that total column, that will be the appropriation part of the budget, and we'll do that in December if there aren't any changes today. So we can go to transit, and Craig Blewett, I think, is here to present that.
Hey, Craig, you online?
It's land. Could be land.
All right, can you hear me okay now?
Okay.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, Craig Blewett here, Director of Mountain Metro Transit, Transit Services Manager for the city. So I'm going to attempt to share my screen. We'll see if it works this time. This host disabled participants screen sharings. Let me try it one more time. And it looks like I'm unable to do it. Lan, can you help me with that?
Here, try it now.
Still says I'm unable to do it. One more try here. One more try.
There we go.
How about that? You see it?
There we go.
Awesome. Now I just need to figure out how to advance the slides. There we go. Okay. I'm good to go. So again, Craig Blewett. Also with me here today are Lan Rao, our business administrator, and Kelly Frazier, our senior financial analyst, to help answer questions you might have on our budget. And Brian Vituli is here as well, who can also help with those questions. We're presenting our 2021 Pprta budget to you for this next year. As in prior years, we'll present our entire budget to you, so just not the Pprta part, but also the city general fund part and other parts. So you see the whole thing and you see the Pprta funding in context. And also, you know, in previous years, our presentations have covered what we're trying to accomplish with our budget and how well we're doing with meeting community needs. So the services we provide, and you've seen this before, we do a fixed route bus service 7 days a week, 362 days a year. We do Metro Mobility ADA paratransit that's required. Same times, dates, and locations as fixed route. And our Metro Rides program is van pool, carpool, school pool, and so forth. So our headlines for this next year, in the city general fund, we got an increase, or we're getting an increase. City council still going through the process, but the proposal from the mayor to council is a $760,000 increase, including a new bus route to the airport and Amazon to start about June of 2021. And on the Pprta side, a minor tax revenue increase that Beverly just went over, and also the transition of our Human Service Provider Program to Ppacg. So as part of the city's budgeting process, we have the opportunity, as does every division, to list unfunded needs for funding consideration. And I'm not going to go through all the lines here, but I just mentioned that we have in our proposal a $760,000 increase for transit, and that would cover our increased contract costs. You know, we have multi-year contracts for operations and so forth that have escalators on a yearly basis. So we are able, with the $760,000, to cover those increases and allow us to continue the services next year that we're providing this year. Also, there's funding for PPE supplies for staff, customers, and contractors. And as I mentioned, that new bus route to Amazon and the airport. So our operating budget for next year is $26.4 million. And this shows what the revenue sources. Pprta provides the biggest share of our different funding streams at almost 40%. The city, about $7.6 million, 29%. Fair and advertising, 12%. And federal grants for operating, 20%. And with the city's amount, we are meeting the maintenance of effort for Pprta. That maintenance of effort level is $5.7 million. And our budget for next year is $7.6 million at this point. On the expenditure side, again, that $26.4 million, the bulk of it goes to support our fixed route bus system, 62.5%. Next is our ADA paratransit service, over 21%. And then administration, and that includes salaries and benefits and utilities and attorney's fees as well. 14%, specialized transportation, $125,000, and van pool, $450,000. And on the capital side, this shows both our revenue on the left side and expenditure on the right side. I'll go through that. but that total for next year is $24.5 million. On the revenue side, federal grants is the biggest share, $17.8 million. Pprta capital, about $990,000, and state grants capital, $5.7 million. On the expenditure side, 21%, about a fifth, going towards rolling stock, purchasing buses and ADA vehicles. 4% is
Somebody's got
yeah.
background. Somebody's got background conversation or phone call. Could you please mute yourself?
Okay. I'm not hearing that now. I'll continue. On the expenditure side, 4% to IT system capital needs, and a full 3/4 is going towards facilities. So this is the year we're seeing expenditures for two big facility projects. One is our new bus storage facility, which we estimate will be $14 million to construct. That's going out for bid here very soon. And also funding to implement our new downtown transit center. We did receive a $5 million grant from CDOT for that this year, and expect to get another $3 million from CDOT next year. We have a rolling 5-year financial forecast. In this graph, red is revenue, blue is spending, and green is our reserve. The reserve amount is targeted at 17%. We are working to responsibly draw down our reserve. This year we started at about twice the amount of our targeted reserve. In 2021 and going forward, spending exceeds revenue, and we'll draw that reserve down. I would not be alarmed by the year 2025 falling below the reserve. Please keep in mind this is a rolling forecast, and if that doesn't change in the next couple of years, we have time to respond. And there are a number of uncertainties here, as there is anytime you're talking about the future. And for this forecast, we've been conservative on both the revenue side and the expenditure side. So these next slides are really the Pprta budget, and so I'll spend a little bit of time here. The top section of rows on this table shows revenue. The middle section of rows deal with our grant matching, and the lower section of rows is operating expenditures. There are 3 columns with numbers. The left is the original 2020 budget, the middle is proposed 2021 budget, and the right is the difference between the two. I do want to point out that the Pprta budget is combined again with the city budget to make up our entire budget. So going through a couple lines to highlight, this line is the amount of projected Pprta funding for 2021. And as I noticed, a small increase of just under $160,000. The next one to highlight is we are forecasting a decrease in fare revenue next year, which is $713,000 less than what we originally forecast for this current year. Again, this is a comparison to the original budget. So we are seeing less revenue due to COVID conditions, which we expect to extend into at least the first half of next year. The next one I wanted to highlight, we're budgeting $1.9 million more in fixed route operations for next year. A big part of this is that we'll have a new fixed route contract next year. And if it's a new contractor, there will be startup costs. So we budgeted for that. And we're budgeting $313,000 less in our ADA paratransit service for next year because we expect a continuation of less demand and fewer rides. So, to be clear, we have to provide every ADA ride requested, but we think the demand will remain lower, at least for the first half of next year, similar to fixed route. Next to highlight, there's a significant decrease in specialized transit services. This is the service for seniors and people with disabilities over and above our ADA requirement. This program is being transferred to Ppacg. In 2020, the Pprta share of that program was $538,000. That also included fare revenue. Minus that fare revenue, $423,000 was budgeted for Hsp last year. And for this next year, that will go down to $125,000. Excluding fare revenue, the true reduction to the Hsp program is just under $300,000 instead of that $413 because of the difference in fare revenue. So, but it's important to note that the overall funding for the Hsp program will be the same in 2021 compared to 2020, but Pprta funding will be less, and I'll explain that a little bit more here in a minute. I think it's also important to note what the impact of the CARES Act funding is on the Pprca budget. You know, we received $21.5 million in CARES Act funding for transit. It's part of the nationwide CARES Act for transit agencies. And that CARES Act generated about $7 million in savings in our 2020 Pprca budget. And the way we plan to use those savings is listed here. About $1.5 million for lost fare revenue, $1.8 million to match additional funding needed for our bus storage project, that big capital project I've mentioned. About $100,000 to provide match for purchasing a new bus for the Amazon bus service. We need another bus to provide that bus route. About $3.5 million for the downtown transit center, and about $50,000 to match a study to locate the new Front Range Passenger Rail passenger station. Specialized transportation services. So I had mentioned that we are completing the transition of the Hsp program administration from Mountain Metro Transit to Ppacg and consolidating the administration of that program starting the first of the year. Important to note, again, sustaining the same funding level, but the funding sources have changed or are changing. So the primary new funding source is going to be Federal Transit Administration 5310 funds, which are intended for enhanced mobility of seniors and people with disabilities. There's nearly a $1 million fund balance currently, and the ongoing annual revenue is about $500,000 per year. So if we can resume the reporting of Hsp ridership data to the FTA, it'll result in a return of about $220,000 in FTA funding, because that funding, that formula funding we get, is due in part to the number of riders or ridership that we have. So the first couple of years, it'll be a temporary use of Pprca funds to partially offset that 2-year loss of the program. And once the funding returns, the city will pass through that funding to the Hsp program, probably using Pprca funds. So why the transition of the Hsp program administration from MMT to Ppacg? Well, first of all, it's really a better fit. That's how they do it in Denver with Dr. Cog. It also allows us as MMT to focus on traditional transit, so our fixed route service, our complementary ADA paratransit service, as well as first and last mile feeding into our system. And really, you know, the Hsp trips represent 1% of all of our trips. So sort of taking those over to Ppacg allows us to really focus on those core services. And the second reason is that all Hsp program funding and rides would be administered by one entity, Ppacg. They already administer the aging and part of the specialized transit funding program, AAA funding. And so that will allow really Ppacg and the community to get a full, complete picture of how well we're being served by the Hsp program overall. Just real quickly, so these are we've shown this before. These are 3 key metrics for how well our transit service is meeting community needs. So how much of the area are we covering geographically? How often do buses come along? And what days of the week and hours of the day do we provide service? So our geographic coverage, about a third, we cover about a third of the urbanized area. Urbanized area is calculated by the U.S. Census Bureau based on density. So of the urbanized area, we cover about a third of it with our bus service in terms of a quarter-mile walk to a bus route, about half of the service area or urbanized area with a half-mile walk, and about 2/3 with a three-quarter-mile walk. So we're still struggling to cover our urbanized area. Frequency, we've really improved, and about half our routes are about 60 minutes, but half are better, and that's much better than it was 10 years ago, and span also all but 3 days of the year. This just sort of gives a graphic, I guess, comparison of 2010 to 2021 in terms of our annualized revenue service hours. So we've more than doubled in the last 10, 11 years, which is awesome. And our frequencies improved, our evening service has improved, and our weekend service has improved. And it's just sort of a map showing the extent of our system. And the pink blob on the north is the Air Force Academy. Pink blob on the south is Fort Carson. And sort of the turquoise and sort of pink blob to the right is Peterson Air Force Base and the airport. This map shows the frequency of buses. This is the weekdays. And once again, we've really improved frequency on several routes. We have identified our high capacity, high frequency routes. We have two that are north-south in the Nevada corridor between UCCS and Southgate. The Academy corridor from length to length, the full length of Academy from top to bottom. And east-west, the Boulder-Platte corridor, as well as a corridor going from downtown to southeast. On Saturdays, our coverage isn't quite as good, but we actually have pretty good frequency on the routes that we do run on Saturdays. And Sundays, even less so in coverage, but again, you know, most of them are 30 minutes, which is good. Proposed service changes for 2021. Kind of shown in the upper right, I guess, which is northeast part of the community. So Route 23 goes through Constitution Hills, Cimarron Hills, up the Powers corridor and back on Powers. The northern half is going to become a 30-minute service, and that's in line with a grant we got to purchase battery electric buses. So this enables us to honor the obligations of that grant. And the second one is the one I mentioned with regard to a new bus route to Amazon and the airport terminal. It's only going to run 7 trips a day to match up to the shift changes in Amazon. So workers will be able to get there before the shift starts. And once their shift ends, they'll also have a bus ride back. It will extend up to the airport terminal as well. It's not envisioned as a premium service for airport passengers in any way. Rather, it's to start really to match Amazon, allow people to get to work at Amazon, and also to extend up to the airport. The airport is partnering with us, and Amazon is actually constructing bus stops as well. So we have 2 good partners on that project. Last 2 achievements for this past year. Number 1, you know, we've provided safe and reliable transit service to our customers through global pandemic. It's been a lot of work. It's been you know, a great task to take on, but boy, it's been a lot of work, and we put a lot of energy into it, and we're happy with the results. I'll talk about in a minute. We have had an issue with an outbreak among drivers, but I'll talk about. But boy, it's been a heck of a year, as we all know. We did continue our partnerships with colleges and hospitals, completed our regional transit plan. Our Title VI Civil Rights program was updated, new safety plan, big capital projects. We did an onboard rider survey, which I'm going to present to you hopefully next month. And we're transitioning that Hsp program to Ppacg. And for this next year, our key initiatives, again, construct our bus storage facility, really get going on the downtown transit center, do design and go through the NEPA process. Our electric bus program is going to start. We have delivery of 4 electric buses next August. Looking for a BRT study along Academy. Mobile ticketing to allow people to pay for bus fares on their phone. The new Southwest Chief passenger station location, Amazon bus route, and our continuous effort, I guess, to do contract and program oversight, which is really a focus of our program. With that, that's it, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Craig? Okay, hearing none. Bev, do you want to continue?
Okay, so then Mike Chavez will probably present the city's capital and maintenance portion.
Yes,
And
I'm here.
that
Yeah, and
starts on page 14.
Jessica, if you'll just put the city's memo up on screen and page through as I call it, I'll let you drive that. So we'll go to page 14. And so on this page, basically, we show that the city's RTA budget for 2021 is going to be 40 million for capital, 25 million for maintenance, and 10 million for transit. Then the next page, we start the list of projects that we're going to be funding in 21 with carryover funds for a combined 21 budget. Of note on these, Academy Boulevard between Bijou and Airport Airport over Spring Creek Bridge, Black Forest, Centennial, and Circle Drive. On this page, we're looking at going to construction in 2021. So there's going to be a lot of work going on. A couple of Circle and Centennial, we're going to try to get those bids out earlier in the year before we're actually ready to go to construction to get contractors on board and hopefully take advantage of some good pricing. If you go to page 16, on that page, Las Vegas and Royer is another project that will be bidding and going to start construction in 2021. And the Platte Avenue Bridge is underway right now. So there's a lot of work going on the capital side. Then we have our trails listed on the next page and the traffic and pedestrian bridge programs. And that's just kind of our proposed funding and what we have going on in 21. So the next month, the quarterly report will be coming out, and that'll have a lot of detail on the status of these projects and the programs. But as far as the capital budget, that's what we have planned for 2021. One note or thing that I want to mention, and I want Bev to confirm, but last year in 2020, we actually did program $1 million payback to the county for the West Colorado. And then, as was mentioned earlier, we're working with the county on the schedule for the remaining portion. So is there any question on the capital side? The Appendix A gives the projects a little bit more detail of what's going on and what we're scheduling. So is there any questions on the city's programs?
Hearing none. Is it all you have, Mike?
Yes.
Okay, Bev, who's up next?
Okay, so the county, Jennifer Irvin. And that is page 29.
Thank you, because it gave me some time to unmute there, Bev. Jennifer Irvin, County Engineer. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Board of Directors. Just briefly go through this because I think it's pretty straightforward, and I know you all do a good job of reading ahead, so I don't want to take a lot of time here, but we still have some money in our capital program from the first portion of Pprta. One thing we did find out between when I prepared this and today is that we did get approval from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to finally close out our Preble's Jumping Mouse project, or our Preble's Jumping Mouse permit on Baptist. So we will be closing out that project, doing any final payments and wrapping that one up. We also did some minor work on Mark Shuffle this fall and expect to be able to close out that permit as well. So we anticipate being able to finalize a lot of these and transfer any final money either to Meridian Road and the Park and Ride, which is under construction, or to Meridian Road, which is currently under construction, and then to be able to finally close all of these out. So we're really excited about that. The next portion is our capital program for the second extension of the capital program. And you'll see primarily we are putting money in 2021, allocating our funds to those projects that we, if you can scroll down a little bit more, that are getting under construction in 2021. So as we discussed previously and earlier this year, we are looking to get Beacon Light, the first phase of that, in coordination with CDOT and the interchange there at County Line Road. So we're putting a significant amount of funds at that low project, getting Eastonville Road into the design phase, and then also hopefully getting Highway 105, at least the first phase, under construction next year. So, and then as you would note, the additional $1 million, which we talked about at the last meeting, allocating that to Academy Boulevard. So what I want to say about our program is that we either have projects completed in the construction phase or all in the design phase at this point. So all of our projects are in some phase of completion, design, or construction. So I feel like we are on track as far as these projects. And then going down into our maintenance budget, we are allocated approximately $10 million this year. We are going through the process right now, which is the process that we usually go through to identify those roadways that we are gonna be spending funds on. As in the past, we're looking at primarily using these funds for our pavement overlay program, our concrete program, and ADAs. We might have some bridge repair that we do this year. We're looking at that. And then also our regular chip seal program that we require actually only materials for, and then also our graveling program, which is a materials, and we use for both those programs, we use our existing staff to be able to accomplish those. So we will be coming to you next year after we get approval for all of those programs and where we're going to spend our money. We take that to our Highway Advisory Commission. We take that to our Board of County Commissioners, and then we have those contracts underway, and you see those contracts as they come through. So we shouldn't see any surprises there. Just a note, we are continuing to carry over $1.5 million for a coordinated project with the City of Colorado Springs at Mark Shuffle Road, and we'll continue on that. There was some discussion, and I wanted to talk to this in regards to payback of several, some monies that we have advanced. The City of Manitou Springs has had a plan for that, and they continue to do that over a few years, and we're very comfortable with that plan. We are also working with the City of Colorado Springs in regards to the plan for the payback related to West Colorado Avenue. I'm very comfortable in regards to making sure that we coordinate with the City of Colorado Springs on that. And we've been having some meetings and have some follow-up meetings planned with Bev on how best to accomplish that. But feel very comfortable about that, and we'll continue working with the City of Colorado Springs on that. I'm finished with my presentation now. If there's any questions, happy to answer those.
Any questions for Jennifer?
I have one, if I could.
Okay, Wayne?
Jennifer, with respect to the, and this may not be directly related to what you just presented, but since you're up in front of us, there was some discussion from the CAC regarding the administration dollars going for planning Pikes Peak RTA 3, and a question of whether the county would be able to expend money under that category, and wondering if you could just address that.
Certainly, Councilman Williams. If the Pprca board determines that they want to allocate funds to that, we will certainly be looking at how we can best utilize those funds, and if we would want to utilize those funds. As you know, we have a pretty small staff. It may be helpful for us to have some support, probably once we determine, have a good project list to help us with that. But if the city wants to use those funds, we certainly support them and other entities, and we'll have to look at our own program and see how best we can use to allocate that. I don't want to say at this point that we're not going to use those funds, because I certainly think if the board makes those available to us, we would look at how best to utilize any funds that come to the county related to that.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, Bev, who's up next?
Okay, so there weren't any more questions for Jennifer, so we could go to page 32 for Manitou Springs. And I don't know if Jeff Jones is on at this meeting.
I am, Bev. I'm right here.
Okay, great. So you're up.
All right. How's everyone? Thank you very much, Beverly. Mr. Chair, good afternoon, the Board of Directors. Jeff Jones, the Public Works Director here in Manitou Springs. What I'll go over today is the planned budget for maintenance as well as capital allocation funds. And before I start, I'd like to thank Jennifer for her vote of concurrence for our payback allocations, which I will go over in a little more detail here in just a minute. So I'd like to start with the planned budget for our maintenance funds. Our 2021 Pprta maintenance allocation is $309,997. We also have a carryover from 2020 of approximately $152,799. And the reason that's significantly lower than what the carryover was from the prior year is that we are using $350,000 for our public works remodel, as well as we used a little over $200,000 for a Manitou Avenue mill and overlay project, which will give us about a total budget for our maintenance fund is $462,796, and the majority of that will be used for mill and overlay and paving projects here in Manitou Springs. On to our capital allocation funds and carryover for our capital projects. The city's Pprta 2021 capital allocation is approximately $487,464. The city of Manitou Springs borrowed funds from El Paso County, as Mr. Godfrey and Jennifer had mentioned earlier. And the city, they advanced that for their A-list. We got that for our A-list projects to pay for a portion of the West Colorado Avenue project. The city of Manitou Springs agreed to pay back El Paso County with a portion of their capital revenue allocations from latter years. To date, Manitou Springs owes El Paso about $858,998. The Pprta staff has recommended that Manitou needs to pay back El Paso County approximately $200,000 a year through 2024, give or take. And our intention, the Manitou Springs intention, is to pay El Paso County $200,000 from the capital allocation starting in 2021. According to Pprta staff, the net of the payback to El Paso County, Manitou Springs will budget the amount of $287,464 in 2021 to our A-list capital projects. Funds were placed, these leftover funds were placed in Manitou Avenue West End pedestrian and drainage improvement and the transit shuttle and surface parking budgets, with the understanding that they will be most likely reallocated to various projects as Manitou continues to implement these projects. So with that, we have 4 capital projects on the books, and one of them is soon to end, which is the WAPS project. So nothing has changed on that, and that should be closed out off the books very soon, which will leave us with 3 projects. One is the MAPS project, which is the Manitou Avenue project, which is from Park Road to Serpentine Circle. And what we've done, we've allocated $187,464 over to that project after the payback of $200,000 to El Paso County to what was carried over from 2021. And a note on that, that project was awarded. We did pick a contractor out of our bidding process, and that was Wildcat Construction who won that. So as we all know, they did the capital project work there for many years down on the West End project for the WAPS project down there. So they'll be doing the same type of work up on that end with our corridor, putting our utilities underground, with our pedestrian, with our sidewalks, with our lighting and everything else that goes up there, new roadways as well. The second one is the Manitou Downtown Sidewalk Drainage and Utility. We haven't started that, so we're carrying over the full amount of $231,965 due to some circumstances with COVID and just wasn't able to get that one going. And the last one is our transit shuttle and surface parking. which is Hiawatha Gardens, and we transferred $100,000 from that capital allocation over to that. They'll get that rolling once again, giving us a budget of $223,230 for that. With that, I would say that next time I present, I will have a more tabular form. It'll be easier to follow that way with the amounts. But that's where we're looking for our maintenance funds as well as our capital funds. And with that, I'll open up to any questions you got.
Any questions for Mr. Jones? Okay, hearing none. Bev, who's up next?
Okay, so the town of Green Mountain Falls, and I believe that Angie from Green Mountain Falls is out of town, so I'll just go over her memo. Every year they spend their maintenance allocation, and for next year they have $39,743 and no carryover. And then for the capital, as you are probably aware of, they finished Belvedere Avenue and they still have the Stilling Basins. So all of their capital allocation is going to the Stilling Basins project, which is $63,084. So it's pretty self-explanatory. Are there any questions?
Any questions?
They haven't started spending any money in the Stilling Basins project yet. So it's been carrying over, and they'll probably get going on that pretty soon.
Okay, who's up after this?
Okay, so the town of Rama, and Cindy, I don't believe is here either, but their budgeted maintenance amount is $7,638, and they're anticipating carrying over $23,896. And they use it for drainage project along Commercial Street because they received a grant, and intersection maintenance and tree trimming and street signs. So they do not receive a capital allocation anymore because El Paso County gave them the money from their allocation to do their one capital project. And now Rama just pays them back by giving them back their allocation. They had a paving project through town. And that's it. Oh, and then we can go on to the administrative budget, which is on page 36. And there was a question from the CAC about this, but mostly every year it's very similar to the prior year. And then in prior years, we used to just have about $250,000 that was remaining, and then we would put that back into transit maintenance and capital in the following mid-year budget. But now we are carrying over almost 47,000 from last year, and we're going to use that for engineering expenditures for the RTA renewal, capital renewal for the third time. And then we will also allocate 200,000, which is under number 2, contract services, engineering estimates for future capital projects. So between those two so far, we will have budgeted 447,000. And like we said, it can be used by any of the member governments. And each year we'll add to that so that there'll be some money so they can get some estimates done for the RTA renewal of the capital. Are there any questions about this budget?
Any questions? Okay, and I think after this, we'll be going to public comments. Is that correct, Bev? Or
Well, let me just go through page 38.
oh,
And
sure.
really quickly, you can see this is the reserve allocation. And it'll just tell you how much is in reserve. Right now, total reserve is $10,533,000 for next year's budget with the change in reserve. So then it's allocated between transit maintenance and capital. And then in the end of the capital of this RTA renewal, the second capital list, the first renewal, but that $5,793,93. That goes into the projects that we're currently working on. Any questions? All right, I'm finished. And so you're right, we could go into the public comment or any other questions relating to the budget.
I do believe we have one person in here who wants to speak on, I believe it's on specialized transit. I do want to clarify before she speaks, because I want to make sure this is clarified. So with Pprta funds and Ppacg funds, specialized transit is still supposed to get approximately $500,000 for the annual budget. Is that correct?
So this is Craig. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So the with the federal funds, the 5310 funds is a substantial amount of funds that are there now. A substantial, I can't think of the word, but there's a standing balance of 5310 funds, and plus there's a annual revenue of $500,000 a year. Between the use of the remaining funds, the existing funds, plus the annual funds, and plus these Pprta funds, the program would be made whole for next year.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so public, I believe we only have one, but we will start off. Jessica, do we have anybody outside of Jolene?
I believe just Jolene.
Okay, Jolene, would you like to come up now for public comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jessica, if you could put up the slideshow. We put together a small slideshow since we're dealing with numbers to make it easier to follow along. Okay, so just thank you, Mr. Chair and Board of Directors, for entertaining Vita, Silver Key, and Fountain Valley's public comments regarding the 2021 budget today. I'm Jolene Hausman, the Executive Director of Fountain Valley Senior Center, but speaking on behalf of all three agencies. Next slide, Jessica. First of all, we would like to congratulate the Pprta for being on track for having their best year yet for revenue over budget, even in the midst of a pandemic. Oh, Jessica, thank you. Mountain Metro has submitted their budget to the board for approval. We would like to make a request for a change to the budget to continue to not only support specialized transit in our region, but the opportunity for growth. The budget submitted by Mountain Metro has 10% of the tax revenue for approximately $10.5 million. They also have an additional $17 million from the CARES Act. And the CARES Act funding should have went to the entire UZA, but as far as we're aware, it's located just in the city's budget. Specialized transit services was reduced to 125 through Pprta budget, which is a 77% decrease. And the reason for that is that Ppacg is going to start administering the 5310 funds. As Craig noted, there is $1 million in the reserves and $500,000 a year. The reason the HSPs had approached the city and Ppacg about moving those funds is those funds have not been available to the HSPs nor the citizens in our region for several years. They've just been with MMT. Next slide. So I just want to highlight again that the decrease is 77% to specialized transit for this upcoming year when comparing last year to this year. Next slide, please. And so on this one, it shows that MMT has projected carryover for even to 2022 of over $14 million. Well, none of that is being allotted to specialized transit, which is our most vulnerable citizens in our community. And during the pandemic, we seniors and disabled adults have been the most vulnerable. However, we've still been changing our services to also include delivery of services to allow the most vulnerable to remain in shelter in place. Next slide, please. During the pandemic in transit, Mountain Metro to the HSPs allotted 0 of the CARES funding dollars of over 21 million. 0 additional dollars to an amended budget, no guidance provided for PPE or any guidelines, 0 adjustments to the cost of rides, even though we can't operate at capacity, and there's no meetings with us on how to meet the needs of the community. What the HSPs provided to the community was innovative ways of serving the community. We started delivery services, and Vita even picks up positive COVID patients from the hospital and will take them home. And we've been operating at a lower capacity. Next slide, please. This slide really shocked me. Preparing for this meeting, I pulled MMT's monthly reports to see how the HSP rides compared to paratransit during the pandemic. These are the total numbers for paratransit that MMT submitted, and these are our total numbers for HSP rides from all funding sources. Shockingly, the paratransit system normally provides double the number of rides than the HSPs, and we actually provided more through April, May, June, and July. And we believe that's because we have greater customer confidence and we have innovative ways of serving the vulnerable populations during the pandemic. Next slide, please. So to highlight what we've done in 2020, during a pandemic, we did consolidate databases and we are leveraging funding sources. We're combining our resources to apply for one grant instead of 3 individual grants. The coming changes will be a virtual call center, our Ppacg managing the specialized transit in the region, and then 5310 funds will actually become available to specialized transit providers for the first time in years. Next slide, please. We believe that specialized transit funding should be from the local level, regional level, state, and federal. Currently, the City of Colorado Springs is contributing $0 from the general fund. They used to contribute, and over the last 2 years, it's now down to 0. With this budget, if this goes through, it'll be a 77% decrease from regional funding source. The state will be leveraging with Ppacg dollars to leverage with state dollars, and then the feds will have the $5310. Holly, you have a question?
Commissioner Williams, do you have a question?
I could wait till the end of your presentation, but my primary question is really, what is your ridership between Fountain and Monument, which are not paying into Pprta? I can't use funding from an organization to pay for rides within cities that aren't paying the sales tax.
The current, all the rides that are funded through Rta do not include rides in Fountain.
Okay.
Those are all from a different funding source.
All right.
Okay, and next slide, please. So our Hsp budget comments or request for consideration is to consider level funding and allow MMT to allocate dollars to specialized transit through Ppacg at the same level, if not higher, in 2021 and ongoing years, and to also allocate to Ppacg to fund the operations of the consolidated call center. Although we will be receiving the 5310 funds, those are funds that should have always been going to specialized transit and citizens in our community. Those should be additional funds, not in place of funds. And carryover funding, the 3 of us have contracts with the City of Colorado Springs under the Rta funding. And there will be a remaining $424,000 minus billing for November and December. And we would like to request that those remainder carryover funds also get turned over to Ppacg to support specialized transit. And at the bare minimum, an emergency stopgap request that if FTA funds do not get approved timely to go to Ppacg, because there is going to be a turnover in administration at the federal level, that Pprta will reinstate level funding to Ppacg through MMT. And we would just like to respectfully request continued support from our regional board of Pprta to fund specialized transit in our community in addition to state and federal dollars. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for Jolene on her comments and recommendations? Okay, hearing none, I do see two things here from my perspective. One is level of, I forgot what they call it when you get additional funds, increasing. Should you increase if you get or pull dollars out? So one of her things was, well, we're getting federal funding, we should allow that to increase shares to them. Whether or not that's something that needs to be addressed in this budget or ongoing budgets, it's a good question. Making sure that, hey, if we just get additional funds, maybe we increase funding to them. But the other aspect is if that federal funding, because again, I just want Jolene to understand, if she will receive the full funding of what was done, whether there's a different pot of money, different way, but you're not being reduced in funding. But it does appear that if there is a concern or a question of that federal funding coming through, would it be backfilled by Ppacg? Or if not, would Pprta backfill it so that there is no loss to specialized training? And for me, that's a big concern. If they don't get additional dollars this year, okay, let's look at it next year for additional funds going forward. But I personally don't want to see reduced funding if federal funds get cut in some way. So is there a discussion from Andy or Rick on whether or not there's any concern or guarantees for fully funding them if those federal funds were not fully allocated?
Mr. Chair, this is Craig Blewett. If I may initially respond, if the federal funds for transit are cut, we have bigger problems than this. So, the federal transit funding has actually been very stable over time. Please know that we get, was it $8 to $10 million in federal transit administration dollars per year to support transit. If that funding is reduced, we have bigger transit problems.
Okay, but to clarify, so you're saying if that federal funds are cuts, you're okay cutting transit, specialized transit. That is what you're saying is a potential outcome.
No, I'm saying our entire transit program for the region would be harmed or would be subject to cuts. So we would have to look at all of our services combined and look where the cuts are most appropriate.
Okay.
And Mr. Chair, if I could add, this is Andy Gunning. We've been working with Craig and MMT to try to figure out this transition now for some time. And it happened by January 1st, 2021. And that's when Ppacg would take over that federal grant, the FTA grant, that has money that's used for specialized transportation. The numbers that Craig presented today, that's what we kind of agreed to as far as level funding for next year. And it's a difference in the funding sources that are going into service going forward, where, as Jolene indicated, she was correct. It wasn't 5310 federal funds in the past. It's been regional and local money that's been used by the city to support the HSPs, but that's now going to be changed where we're using that FTA grant instead. Not to go down the rabbit hole, there's a lot of things we're still trying to work out with FTA to make sure the money's available on January 1st and we can actually get contracts in place to make sure there's not an interruption in service. And we feel pretty confident that we can make that all happen. That's still going to be in place. But the one thing I would mention as the entity that's taken over that program, and we're going to consolidate all those funds into one umbrella, is that we don't know what we don't know. So with more federalized money going into the program instead of local regional money, we're hoping that doesn't have an impact on service. I don't think it will as we sit here right now, but we don't know yet until we get into it. I know on the roadway side, whenever you put federal money on a project, that drives up the cost of your project and it takes longer to get things out the door and constructed. I hope there's not a similar parallel on the transit side, but again, we simply don't know. But Jolene brings up some really good points as far as, if there is carry forward money available, if there's revenue over budget that's available through the Pprca. And I think it's legitimate to think about, should a portion of that flow back to specialized transit? And that's probably a conversation that, we need to have with Craig and his folks to figure out how that would be split up. So hopefully that helps.
Okay, any other comments?
Yeah, this Wayne, let me just follow up on what Craig said. If And what Andy said. So federal transit funding has been reasonably stable. If for some reason, and I don't foresee this happening in any way, shape, or form based on the recent election results, but if the federal government decided to get out of transit suddenly and cut that, there is a huge impact that would affect all of the transit routes. And it's a much broader discussion than simply saying, well, we'll protect this one area and not the rest of the transit system. I don't think there's a whole lot of reason to go down the rabbit hole because I don't see the feds getting out of it. But if they did, it would be a huge discussion that would need to have public hearings and a process where this board and others are wrestling with how to address that huge 8 million shortfall. And so with respect to saying, well, we can guarantee everything in the future, I don't think we can, but certainly that would be part of the discussion, and our specialized transit providers would be part of that discussion. But trying to figure out what we would do if they cut it by 2 million, if they cut it by 3 million, all of those possible parameters, I don't think makes sense given the stability in that funding source over the years.
Okay, thank you for the feedback. Anybody else?
Mr. Chair, one thing I should mention too, I think it is important, given all those comments, agree the feds aren't going to get out of the transit business, but I really do think it is important that we continue to see Pprta money flow into that program as well. We've got a sort of an agreement over the next 5 years as to what that might look like as far as Pprta revenue for specialized transportation. And it's critical because it's such a flexible funding source that we can use for match and can use for other needs within the senior transportation community. So I just wanted to make sure that that was understood as well, that we see a long-term ongoing relationship with the Pprta and this program.
Okay, thank you. I think it was some good clarifying and additional information there. So any last comments from any of the directors? Okay, Jessica, is there any other public calling in the last few minutes?
I don't believe so.
Okay, so with that, I will close item 7 and go to.
Okay. So this is the time that the board gives me direction on any changes that they would like to see in the budget before it comes to the public hearing at next month's board meeting with resolutions for the budget, accepting it and appropriating the funds. So I don't know. I don't think there are any directions to me as far as changing the budget.
Were there any comments or questions or directions, recommendations from any of the directors?
This is Commissioner Williams. I'm fine with what we've done this year. I do appreciate Jolene's comments and bringing them to our attention. I think it's something we seriously need to watch in future years. So, but I think that we should go ahead and move the budget forward as presented.
Thank you.
Okay, and I would agree. I think the additional information that came in there, if for some reason something happened to federal funding, it would require us to come back again immediately as directors to address the funding for broad-ranged transit along our Pprta and the Ppacg area. And so it would be immediately, I think, brought up back up to the entire directors for funding reallocation discussion. Is that accurate, Beverly?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so then with that, I too would, I don't have any recommended changes.
Thank you.
Okay, so item 8, 2020 capital maintenance and public transportation contracts. City of Colorado Springs. Mike?
Mike Chavez, City Engineering. So we have 4 items today. First item is a change order to FHU's design contract on the 30th Street improvements. And that is allocating the remaining RTA 1 funds that are in the roadway and safety operations program. So they'll use that funding to finalize the design and for design services during construction. Next item is from RTA 2, the extension, the roadway and safety and traffic operations program. We are having a crosswalk installed on Sierra Madre just south of Bijou by Hsp Community College. They bought the office building across the street, and so for safety reasons, we're building a raised pedestrian crossing there. It's a mid-block crossing. We're not going to put a signal there, but there is a fair amount of traffic that comes off Bijou and kind of goes a little bit fast. So this is a safety item that we will be building there as soon as this contract gets approved. Then the next item we have is on-call contract renewals. These are contracts that are still valid. We put out a bunch of new RFPs, which we'll be bringing next month, but this is a renewal of existing contracts. And one of the questions that came up, if you go to the memo and the list of all the on-call projects, contracts, there's a couple that were kind of flagged at the CAC. One was namely the Circle Fleet Maintenance. And that one is for the contract price is 4.8 million. Now that's the total contract price that will be used with city and RTA funds, and that number kind of brought some concern for the CAC members. So what I did in the memo on the notes is I put a note there that typically the RTA pays about $200,000 to the Circle contract, and then the other one that we use quite a bit is a little bit below the TP Enterprises. That's the one that we use for our TA project landscape maintenance. And even though it's $1 million contract, typically we only go to about 400,000 on that. So didn't have all the RTA numbers for all these, but these totals that are on here are for total contract, and some of it will be used with city funds and RTA. And one of the things to note is that the city only has so much RTA capital and maintenance money, so we can't exceed or spend more than what we have budgeted. So even though all these contracts seem like, you know, they add up to more than what we have in the RTA, we're not going to use all of them to that extent because we have a budget that kind of restricts us. So is there any other question on the on-call renewals? Okay, and then the last item we have is we built a couple of pedestrian crossings at Rangewood and Briargate. These are safety items that we built with the on-street bike improvements. And there is also a vicinity map that shows where these trail crossings were built. And they're just so that people can cross these streets safely, and they have a refuge in the middle of them. Island. So that's that's all that we have. Is there any question on these?
Any question for Mike? Okay, if not, would be a motion to approve.
This is Commissioner Williams. Move approval.
Is there a second? Hopefully that's just audio difficulty.
I'll second it, Leonidas, this way.
Sorry, Mike, you weren't getting a second
I
for
know,
that.
I was getting a little worried there.
Okay, I have a motion and a second finally to approve items 8A. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any approved? Any opposed, say nay. Okay, so that passes unanimously. Item 8A, I mean, say 8B, City of Manitou Springs.
Or can you see me? I can't tell if my camera's working well.
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, once again, thank you, Mr. Chair and Board of Directors. I only have one capital project to bring forward today, and that is the City of Manitou Springs requesting Pprta concurrence. Use 1.22 million from the Manitou Avenue West End PED and Drainage Improvement Fund as the local match to fully award the construction project for the MAPS project to our lowest bidder. And as I mentioned earlier, that is Wildcat Construction that was selected. This project is the final section of Manitou Avenue reconstruction effort, and it will reconstruct the roadway, the sidewalks, underground utilities, lighting improvement, drainage improvement, as well as everything else in ADA compliance. And what this will do for us is it will complete our Manitou Avenue corridor. As we know, the West End project is wrapping up the WAPs. We've repaved the roadway from in front of City Hall now to Serpentine, or excuse me, not Serpentine, but the Ruxton Circle. And basically this project is taken off just above Ruxton Circle up to Serpentine Drive, and it will finish our main corridor all the way through town and give us a really wonderful, solid for the future way for people to transit and to enjoy our great city there.
Mr. Chair, I'd move approval this morning.
I'd second that. This is Director Graham.
Hey, I've got a motion and a second to approve item 8B. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. All right, that passes unanimously. Items 9, other reports, City of Colorado Springs. It looks like transit. Craig?
Yeah, back again, Craig Blewett, Transit Services Manager with the city. Our report is in your packet. The local bus routes are fixed route service, continuing our decrease in ridership with COVID, down about 42% compared to the same month as last year. On the ADA paratransit side, also a similar decrease, about 47% compared to ridership a year ago. And just as kind of a reminder, and I've mentioned this before, nearly half of our rides on ADA paratransit are to day programs like Goodwill. Those are group programs. Those programs have been closed down, which is why we have not provided those rides. They have come back to a certain degree and are open part day for, I think they kind of go through shifts with different clients, but we've been brought back our drivers from furlough, and we have been providing that service. On the van pool program, again, that one has been significantly impacted by COVID, down about 80% compared to the same month the year prior. I guess the really thing that maybe hit on today in terms of an update is we have had a COVID outbreak among employees at our fixed route bus service contractor. The contractor is RATP Dev. They've now had 9 drivers test positive, and there are about another 20 drivers who are in self-isolation as a precaution. Either they've reported that they have symptoms or that they've been exposed to someone else who tested positive. What I can tell you is that both RATP Dev and us here at the Mountain Metro have been working very closely with the county health department in responding to the outbreak, and we're following all the guidance that they have in terms of protections we can be having here, as well as bringing employees back to work after they've isolated. So it's been real difficult. It's impacted about 30% of our driver workforce. As you can imagine, we've had to reduce service as a result of that. It's been tough in that sometimes we don't know until last minute how many drivers we're going to have. And so we've had to make kind of game day decisions in terms of service, which has been real challenging for us and our customers in terms of getting the word out. And when we cut service, we run the risk of having too many passengers in a bus. And so on any given day, we're trying to provide as much service as we can, especially on our highest ridership routes, to avoid that other problem. So it's been real tough and challenging, but unless we get more new cases We are going to start having drivers come back from isolation, and we do expect to be bringing service back. So it's been tough. You know, there's been a real surge in the community, and it's impacted, I think, all corners of the community, and certainly transit is not exempt from that. So it's been difficult. But happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Craig? All right, hearing none. Move to other reports, City of Colorado Springs, change orders. Mike?
Yeah, this is Mike. This is our informational change order log. Is there any questions on any of the items on there?
Any questions for Mike? All right, hearing none. Thank you. Item 10, administrative actions and reports. Appointment, reappointment process for Citizen Advisory Committee members.
This is Rick. I'll take this one and the next two, please.
Okay.
The CAC bylaws, which are approved by the board, provide for staggered terms on the CAC. There are the member government appointed CAC members from each of the 5 member governments. Then there's the at-large and at-large alternates, and those by board practice are appointed by the board. However, the board approved a board policy number 23 some years back, delegating to a standing subcommittee of the board and the CAC chair. So it's the board chair, board vice chair, and the CAC chair on this standing committee to review applications for reappointment or appointment to the CAC at-large and at-large alternate positions. So there's 4 at-large positions that are there where the terms are coming up December 31. One of the 4 is term limited after serving 2 terms. 3 of the others are completing their first term. They're eligible for a second term. So those 3 have submitted requests to be reappointed, and they're in your packet. Rick Hoover, Carlos Perez, and Ed Dills. So keeping with Board Policy 23, I'm recommending that the board approve a motion delegating to or directing the board standing subcommittee of the board chair, board vice chair, and CAC chair to consider to review the request for reappointment of the 3, and also make a decision of whether or not to advertise to fill the one soon to be vacant at-large position, or you could opt to leave it open. But mainly a motion to direct to the subcommittee to take some action on these 4 at-large and at-large alternate positions.
Okay, any discussions on that recommendation, or do we have a motion to approve that the discretion of the standing subcommittee?
Move approval.
This is Commissioner Williams, second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the stated recommendation for the standing subcommittee approvals. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. And that passes unanimously. Okay, 10B, Rick?
This is just an information item, a reminder to the board that the board members are appointed by their respective member governments for 1-year terms, a calendar year. So it's a reminder that you should please contact your respective governing body and request reappointment to the Pprta board. The other item is just a reminder that the chair and vice chair will be flipping between the county and the city for January, and that at your January meeting, you'll need to select the chair from the city directors and the vice chair from the county directors, as well as the board secretary. So again, just reminder, just courtesy reminder, and just information.
And I actually want to add something here. I believe we had an issue. You require a letter on file, correct? Because I think this year we had made those decisions and not had a letter, and we could not vote who the chair or vice chair were going to be because we only had,
Strongly prefer, I guess it's up to the board, how much proof you want to require, but letters best, email second best, and just an oral statement at either December or January board is third best, but something on the record, something in the minutes.
yeah, I just recall earlier this year, we had an issue. We could not vote on something because we did not have a quorum of the appointments or letters on file.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
just
sorry, go ahead.
no, let me just clarify. These are not just someone says they're doing it. You need a vote of the body. And so the problem is the city had not done their annual vote. And Richard and I have already talked about getting that scheduled for our December meeting. The commission hadn't done their organizational rule, which takes place. And so, and you guys in the commission may need to do a preliminary one that then gets revised once Commissioner-elect Geithner takes office. But that's a vote that actually needs to take place, and really practically it needs to take place in December so that they're in place for that meeting unless there's time. I don't know what the various timing. Rick, when is our January meeting?
13th, I believe.
So if folks aren't going to be able to do that, then the county may need to do 2 votes. I don't know when Commissioner Geithner takes office.
All right, thanks for the clarification. And now I do recall exactly, that's exactly what the issue was last year. And who else had a comment?
Oh, it was Jennifer Ivey. I was trying to find the document so I could quote from it, but I believe it's in writing. It's actually on the screen. I don't need to look for the document. So identified in writing annually by his or her appointing party. So the verbal does not make your legal counsel happy.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Okay, Rick, 10C.
Okay, the CAC and the board have spent several meetings talking about the Pprta 3 issues that have populated our list. The matrix, Jessica, which is should be the last 4 pages, maybe the last 5 pages, has been the working document for the CAC and the board recently. And the CAC discussed items 2, 3, and 4 at its CAC meeting. But then Gail Sturtevant from city staff and Jennifer Irvin from county staff stepped forward and volunteered to take the entire list themselves and take it through their respective staffs and up through their respective governing bodies and bring back the entire 16-item list in 2 to 3 months from now, and take it off of the CAC and board agendas for just at least December, January, possibly February, so that the CAC and the board can then have a list with the city and county combined recommendations on all items. And obviously city and county are 99% of the funding. So that's the request of Gail Sturtevant and Jennifer Irvin. I'm comfortable with that. Beverly's comfortable with that. Andy Gunnings is comfortable with that. And Jim Godfrey, chair of the CAC, is comfortable with that. So unless the board wants to dive into any of the discussion of the 16 items right now, that would be the staff's recommendation, is just defer this for 2 to 3 months until it comes back from city county staff through the CAC and then to the board in either February or March.
Okay, any questions for Rick on this?
I think that sounds like a good idea. Do we need a motion to do that?
That would be fine.
Okay, sounds like you do need a motion to approve that recommendation.
I would move that we approve this list, or that we delegate this list to county and city staff until until they can present it to us as a combined list in a future meeting, by March. Hopefully by March. How's that?
That's good.
Second, this Wayne.
Okay, any last discussion on that one? Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. All right, that passes unanimously. Item 11, Pprca member, a member announcements. Any members who'd like to comment?
Are we doing a meeting in December?
Okay, thank you, Mark. Rick?
Yes. It'll be the 9th. Haven't heard any request not to.
Well, we have to approve our budget, so I kind of think it's kind of critical we need.
I think, wait, do we need that?
Thank you,
Do we
Wayne.
still need to do that?
Last meeting.
I do have it on my agenda. Yep, I have it on the agenda. Okay, anybody else? Okay, hearing none. Item 12, I guess we were adjourned. Do we have to prove that? A motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, Director Graham.
All right, a motion, a second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. All right, that passes unanimously. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Everyone have
Take
a
care.
safe Thanksgiving.
You
God
too.
bless.